Well, the Nashville Predators defense struggled all last season. Today, we'll discuss whether we are more likely to see an improved blue line next season or another inevitable defensive debacle.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off today's episode shouting out our Locked On Predators insiders community and our everydayers who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. I am Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I am Emma Lingan, and I'm an NHL reporter and host with the Hockey News.
Emma and I are wading through the jingweeds, talking about what needs to be better next season for the Nashville Predators, and also wrestling with how likely things are to improve in certain areas. Yesterday, we tackled goal scoring. Today, we're going to talk about the flip side of that coin. We are going to talk about the defense. We are going to discuss the problems that Nashville cannot have again. We're going to wrestle with the question of Barry Trotz's moves in the offseason, and we're going to talk about what realistic best and worst case scenarios could be for the D. Emma, I always kick off the episode shouting out our insiders community who we love and our everydayers, which is always fun to chat with them in the comments section. But I want to give an extra special shout out, Emma, to our international listeners. Got to chat yesterday with a listener from Norway. So I don't know how to say so freaking glad you're here in Norwegian, but if I did, I would say it right now. So, hey, to all of our international listeners.
And you honestly probably don't want to hear either of us try to attempt to speak, to say anything in Norwegian. Probably wouldn't go well, but we just know the intent, it's
the feel is there.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. We welcome you in English, but we mean it in Norwegian to the best of our ability. Yeah. So much to talk about in English and a lot of it's painful, friends, because we're talking about defense. You know, like I mentioned earlier yesterday, we talked about how goal scoring was a big problem for the Predators last season. Friends, the defense was hideous, as we say. I was saying to Emma, I had this moment of like, I'm a former theater major, maybe thinking back on the defense, I was being overly dramatic when I say they were hideous. But when you look at the stats, friends, it was as bad as you all remember it was. They allowed the fifth most goals against at 5-on-5. They had the second worst goals allowed above expected. They were giving them away, friends. Giving away goals. They had the fifth most defensive zone turnovers. Now, here's what's interesting, and I think it's something we have to keep in mind. They were seventh best on the penalty kill. So again, we circle back to, friends, we got a 5-on-5 problem. We got a 5-on-5 problem.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the Preds are as good as they are on special teams last season and as bad as they were at 5-on-5, Emma. It is a phenomenon.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because I would say the special teams, like they actually were good. They were pretty good on special teams last year, both the power play and the penalty. I mean, the power play had its ups and downs, I think, but overall the penalty kill last year was excellent. And now I'm not at all trying to suggest that, hey guys, it's okay that they finished second to last in the division because the penalty kill was good. That doesn't matter at the end of the day. But it's like that at least allows you to kind of narrow your focus and be like, okay, here's the issue. Right. Now, we still don't know exactly what the issue was. I think there was plenty of them. But defensively and offensively, as you mentioned, it seemed like the problem was primarily at 5-on-5.
Yeah. It was. And I think that's so interesting because it feels to me, and feelings are like farts. So, and I haven't looked this up, but it seems to me that more often happens in the inverse. You have a team that's pretty good at 5-on-5, and where they can't get it together is on the man advantage or playing down a guy. Nashville did, like you said, they were very competitive, up a man or down a man. It's when things were even. At some point, you're just like, could somebody just take a penalty so we could play well? Could anybody want to go to the penalty box? Yeah, anybody.
Either team. Yeah.
Either team. Before we try to tackle all of the X's and O's of the defense, I think one of the things that we have to talk about looking back and looking ahead is that Nashville had a personnel problem last season. And I don't know that they started out necessarily with a personnel problem, but friends, the defensemen who started the season in Nashville, who are no longer in consideration for the lineup: Alexander Carrier, Jeremy Lauzon, Dante Fabro, Luke Shen, and locked on patron saint Mark Del Gaizo. Emma, when you consider those players who are clearly no longer in the mix this season, what did Nashville lose by losing any of those guys?
Well, I think we know I could go on about this, and I have, in fact. Go back and watch past episodes, but I am not a fan, was not at all a fan of the Dante Fabro move. I think that in him, they lost one of their most consistent defensemen. Is he going to do anything to knock your socks off? No. But you know what you're going to get from him. And he was also one of the most consistent defensive partners for Roman Josi. Kind of important. Also, right shot defenseman, which apparently is just like a unicorn in the NHL. Who would have thought that, you would think like lefties are more of the rare breed? No, it's righties. So that's that. I think Alex Carrier, same thing. You lost a right shot defenseman. Did he quite live up to the expectations that he sort of, set for himself after that great rookie year that he had? Probably not. Injuries were a big part of that as well.
Right.
He's an undersized guy, but he still blocked a lot of shots. Again, do I think that he was integral to the Nashville Predators, team structure? Not necessarily, but I don't think that the team is better without him.
Right.
Luke Shen, of course, you lost some veteran leadership, you lost size, you lost physicality, didn't lose a lot of speed, but that you lost a lot of things that are, typically good in defensemen, maybe not the actual maybe not the best for Andrew Brunette's system, maybe not the best fit. But it's still, he did a lot of things well. Same with Jeremy Lauzon. You lose size, you lose physicality, you lose a lot of hits, you lose a lot of block shots. And again, with all of those guys, you're losing, like, I don't know, you're just losing guys who've been there and who know what they're doing. I mean, it's sad that that's where the line is. But I mean, when you look at the last year, the defensive core that ended the season last year, when Nick Blankenberg was on your top pair, and no disrespect to him, he did wonderfully in that role that was thrust upon him. But I mean, that's not a situation you want to be in.
Right. I also do want to point out, with losing Luke Shen, you lose the fun of sitting next to Robbie Stanley in media row, listening to him go, "Give Luke Shen that puck. Luke Shen will shoot that puck."
You mean Luke, 6 shots on goal in 3 seconds, Shen? You remember that?
I do. I don't think anybody is the same after seeing Luke Shen 6 shots in under 3 seconds. It was glorious.
He stood in front of that net and just whacked it 6 times. He looked like a little, like in the tabletop hockey where you twist the knob to have the guy's stick move. That's what he looked like. It was like just whack, 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 whack. And of course, none of them went in because such is the story of the Predators season. But then I think we made him third star of the game after that.
And he was so tickled in that post game. He was like laughing because he was asked,
like,
have you ever had that many shots on goal in that short a period of time? Luke Schenn probably never had that many shots on goal in this 60-minute game, y'all.
No.
Love it. I miss Luke Schenn. I miss Luke Schenn.
He's always a fun chat too. He was fun to chat with.
Great guy. So interesting. Yeah, he's high quality. Barry Trotz, of course, made 2 additions to the blue line. Coming up, we're going to talk about what we need to see from the Knicks squared, and then we got to talk about the captain. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you are ready for all those kickoffs with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You will love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, whether it's player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you are watching your favorite team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, Emma, Barry Trotz, a lot of shipping out. But he did go out and bring in Nick Hague and Nick Perbix, the Knicks squared, as I like to call them. And this is an interesting situation because basically you have brought in these guys who are in kind of that sweet spot of a little bit younger than, say, a Luke Schenn, but have an NHL time under their belts with Vegas and with Tampa Bay. But you're asking them to play up in opportunity. That's a little risky, especially when the defense that remains really wasn't that great last season and has to get it together around the 2 new Knicks squared. So what is going to help Nick Hague and Nick Perbix be able to come into Nashville and be successful in a bigger role than they're used to?
Consistent defensive partners. What a concept. But I mean, listen, injuries and whatnot will happen that you can't control. What you can control is leaving guys together for more than a game at a time before you decide that it doesn't work. And so I think that, you know, I do agree, first off, to go back to what you said about, like, you're asking a lot of those guys. Now, I'm not saying that they can't do it. I'm also not saying that they can. I don't know. We'll find out. But I think that maybe the bright side to that, the silver lining is, well, it can't really get much worse than it was last year.
I mean, statistically, you are correct.
Yes. So I think that it's like, okay, I mean, how much worse can it really be? But I think that you need to have consistent partners. And again, I think last year there were so many things at play. There were the, trades and waivers in Dante Fabro's case, but you had like the trade of Carrier, Fabro on waivers. You had Roman Josi getting injured. You had, like other guy, but then it was like Spencer Stastney popping up and down, Mark Del Gaizo popping up and down. Justin Barron comes in after the Carrier trade, and he's God knows what he's doing. But then you pick up Andreas Englund off of waivers, and Jordan Osterley comes in, and it's like all of these moving parts.
Yes.
And all of which Nick Blankenberg, again, he didn't even start the year with the team. So I think there's so many things, and some of them were under their control and some of them weren't, like injuries, they're going to happen. But I think that for whatever can be controlled, you need to try and keep it consistent and don't immediately hit the panic button as soon as one thing goes wrong. It's like, well, nope, got to switch it up, put them with another partner, got to spark something. No. Now, I'm not saying leave them together until the end of time if it's clearly not working, but I mean, there needs to be a balance. And I think that as far as, because again, you want to spread the wealth a little bit, but I really do think if you have Josi on your top pairing and Shea on your second pairing again, then you kind of know already where those two new guys are going to slot in. It's going to be Hague on the top pair with Josi, and it's going to be Perbix with Shea. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that as a starting point. A lot of people immediately losing their minds. Nick Hague isn't a top pairing defenseman. Listen, he may not be, but he may be. The fact is, we just don't know. So while I agree, yes, you're expecting a lot, you're asking a lot of them, and it's like one of those things. We're coming out of a year where everything that went wrong could go did go wrong.
Yes.
Now you're kind of banking on, okay, everything's got to go exactly right for this to work. And it may or may not. But again, I come back to, listen, the bar is so dang low after last year that I'm like, say la vie, whatever happens. But yeah it's you're just kind of, you're hoping for a lot, you're expecting a lot, and it could happen, but it also might not.
I get a little bit worried on one hand because I think you have I'm hoping, I anticipate that Adam Wilsby is going to compete for a spot on the opening night roster, but that is somebody who spent a lot of time away from the ice, injured last season. So kind of out of the groove of on ice doing what Andrew Brunette wants a defenseman to do. You have maybe Tanner Mollendyk could get he's never played for Andrew Brunette and doing what Andrew Brunette wants him to do. And so when you bring in the Knicks squared, I think I want them to be surrounded by players who know this defensive system well and can kind of cover up any sort of learning curve that they may have. The upside, like you said, Josi could do that. Shea could do that. We saw a very different Brady Shea at the end of the season. So there is a concern, and there is, well, maybe they will be with the right guys to get them settled into this system a little bit quicker. We do have to talk about Roman Josi because, of course, his injury is a huge concern. It has to be something that is mentioned. And what I think is so interesting is that the defense was never great. Even when Josi was healthy, it was never great. And I think part of that was the great Shea Josi experiment, which went the way of the great Ekholm McDonough experiment. It didn't go well, in case you didn't remember the Ekholm McDonough debacle. Didn't go well.
Those balloons that just flew up in your face.
What was that?
Were those sarcastic balloons? Like
sarcasm balloons?
A great experiment.
A great experiment. Probably can't make them happen again. I don't know. I don't know what I do with that makes them do that. But I felt like the balloons didn't read the room with what I was saying because it didn't actually go well.
Unless they were sarcasm balloons.
Sarcasm balloons. Raise the sarcasm balloons. So I think it's going to be interesting to get Josi back. What is your concern level with Josi, his health, and kicking off the season?
I don't know. I feel like my concern level for this season is pretty low, honestly.
Yeah.
I think for me, and this is not really a conversation for today, but I think like I had always thought of Roman Josi as like he defies father time. Like, yes, he's getting up there, but he still is super impactful and you would never know. And he ages like fine wine and all of that. Now I'm a little bit more like, oh, he may not be around as long as I had thought. But as far as my concern level for this year, I don't know. I mean, it's in the back of my mind, but I feel like everyone now is so many people. That's the first thing they think of. It's like, oh my God, Roman Josi, he's injured. I mean, yes, it's a concern. It's a concern. But
Yeah.
I think the only reason that the team even said anything, that the team even made the announcement about it, was because they were doing damage control, because he mentioned something casually to someone in Switzerland.
Right.
It gets reported, it gets over here. The team wanted to take control of the narrative and be like, yes, we knew about this. It's all fine. It's under control. But I think the fact that the team said something is like, that's what made people like really freak out. And I don't at all mean to imply that it's not serious, and that it's not worth considering, but I he has said, the team has said he's good to go.
Right.
And so we have no reason not to believe that right now.
Yeah. I'm with you. I am very aware of it. I'm very mindful of it long term when we talk about Roman Josi, but I'm not like, oh my gosh, we're going to get to training camp. Is he going to be wobbly? Like, it's not
Yeah.
there. And I think
Yeah.
there are some people who are there. I'm not there. Here is what I will say about Roman Josi. Roman Josi is consistency personified. He is always good. Sometimes he is Norris Trophy great. Roman Josi just isn't bad. And last season, the defense was terrible, but I don't know that that was because Roman Josi was bad. And so I'm not as concerned about the captain as I think some people are coming back. His age, his injury, and his performance last season. I'm not as concerned about him. Coming up, we are going to talk about some young blue liners who will get a good look in training camp. We're going to talk about the chances that some of these fresh faces will have to crack that opening night roster. And we're going to talk about some of the blue liners who don't get much screen time. All right, Emma, talking about defensemen and training camp, the name that we have talked about several times on the podcast, and we will continue to talk about through training camp, it's Tanner Mollendyk. Will he make the opening night roster? And I think that that's going to be a great storyline to follow through training camp. Of course, we know Andrew Brunette has said he really would have liked him in the opening night lineup for a couple seasons now. And Barry Trotz is like, slow your roll, Bruno. We'll see how slow the roll is coming out of training camp. You and I have talked about Andrew Gibson, who I think is somebody who has something to prove in training camp. I don't know necessarily that he is, opening night roster kind of guy, but I am very curious to see how he plays defensively against a Forsberg or, a Stamkos or a Marchessault. I think he has taken steps forward in his game. But let's talk about some of the other players who maybe don't get as much screen time, audio time. What do you call it? Podcast time, chat about. We don't chat about like we used to. We don't chat about them anymore. You did mention this guy earlier, Nick Blankenburg. Let me tell you, some people are born into greatness. Some have it thrust upon them. Nick Blankenburg, it was thrust upon him. And he was like, sure, I'll quarterback the top power play unit. And he did. I love what Nick Blankenburg was able to do last season. Was one of the few bright spots in, let us reiterate, a dismal defensive season. But I don't know if he is necessarily going to end up at the end of training camp as the next man up for the Nashville Predators. What do you see his role being for this team?
Yeah, I think, and again, I hate it for him because we have to put things into perspective here. What he did last year was remarkable. I mean, he
Incredible.
was the the Nashville chapter of the PHWA, we made him our nominee for the Masterton Trophy for, like resilience and commitment to the game. And it's really just the for love of the game award. And that's really what he was. I mean, like, he did so much more than what was asked of him. And I think that, so relative to his career and for him, he had a fantastic season. That being said, that's not enough. He is not the top, he's not a top pairing defenseman on a contender in the NHL.
Right.
It's just not what it is. And so I think that his role, I see him again as AHL depth. Now, the plus side of that is, what you have in him should you need him. If you need, again, like a right shot defenseman is apparently like finding a unicorn, but I mean, you have a very reliable one that what you're going to get from him. But again, I see him more as AHL depth if all goes well.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see him in training camp with everybody. I think it'll be interesting to see him there. And I agree with you. Just incredible season. Deserves a ton of kudos for what he did individually and just, for the team. Man, he stepped in. There was nobody around except Nick Blankenberg with a smile and the puck. So gotta love that. Spencer Stastney. It's not tax season, but we're going to talk about Spencer Stastney anyway because it's hockey season. Love Spencer Stastney's skill set. Obviously last year he missed training camp in the start of the season. He is coming into training camp after apparently working out in the offseason, which Spencer Stastney, we didn't know you didn't do that much. So who knows, like how mad his skills are going to be on the ice. Do you think he is opening night roster, or do you think he is another one of those pieces that's going to be a great call up to have?
Well, here is the tough part. And honestly, the same applies actually to Blankenberg, not exactly. Let me back up. Neither one of these players is waivers exempt. So if you do call them up, you have to go through you have to know that there's the possibility that they get claimed on waivers before you set them back down. That being said, what is unique about Stastney's contract, if you'll recall, when he went through arbitration last offseason, he signed a 2-year contract. The first year of that was a 2-way, and this year it's a 1-way.
That's
so
right.
What that means for those who don't know is that he gets paid the same whether he plays in the AHL or the NHL. 2-way contracts have a setup where, like, if you're in the AHL, you make this amount. If you're in the NHL, you make this amount. And obviously the NHL amount is much larger. But now, I don't think that Barry Trotz is going to go to Andrew Brunette and be like, look, like we got a lot of money riding on this kid. And whatever you do, fit him into the lineup. I don't think that it's going to come to that, but it is worth considering. Just of note, I would say.
That is of note, yeah.
Is the structure of his contract. Now, if you take that out of it, you take the financial piece out of it, to me, I don't see him being more. I don't even see him on the opening night roster. I would say maybe as a 7th defenseman, but even then, I don't think, number one, I don't think that's the best role for him. Number two, I see an England or an Osterley as the 7th defenseman, because I keep forgetting those guys exist, but they do. And I see that as a better role for one of them. So yeah, that's just kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. It's going to be really interesting to see how they manage a player like Stastney, who is kind of in that in-between phase where you're like, you know what? I don't know how much more growth he's going to get from AHL minutes, but I don't know if he's quite ready to step into a larger role of NHL minutes. So there's a couple players that I think are kind of in that limbo. Stastney is one of them. Let's talk about the Predators' pet project and Emma's pet peeve, Justin Barron, friends. Justin Barron. Justin Barron. They love Justin Barron. And you know what? I think he's delightful. But it's almost like it's the cart before the horse. You love a defenseman with some offensive chutzpah who is like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do a little something, something. You love that. But the horse that you want going first is the defensive side of their game. And so that's an area where I think we need to see, kind of some different opportunities and examples from Justin Barron. Did I dance that well?
I'm like, it gets to a point where I'm like, have we tried playing him as a forward? Have we tried putting him on the wing and just seeing what
see what happens?
It became kind of a running joke on press row during games last year. It would be like, oh, we got a Justin Barron sighting in the defensive zone. Like, that's news. Defenseman in the D zone. He definitely, like, I remember when the trade happened and people were very upset, and I get it, but I am like, okay, the Canadians viewed him very much as a project. And I, having not really seen him or knowing anything more than that, I was like, all right, well, maybe, this could fit, this could work. But holy,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
I get that.
Great offensive instincts, I guess. But like, now there are some, so like, for example, you think like, well, you don't have to be a big guy who blocks a lot of pucks to be a defenseman. Look at Quinn Hughes, one of the best defensemen in the league. Yes, Quinn Hughes is a great offensive defenseman. Obviously, he's a smaller guy. He's not, going to be intimidating anyone with his size or his physicality, but he is very good with the puck and he is very gifted offensively. And that's the whole, like, his style of good defense is the way that he handles the puck and, is able to squeeze, kind of like go in and out of players and skate really well and all of that. So you think like, okay, so he's a good offensive defenseman, but yes, he is. But Quinn Hughes is also not a defensive liability. And that is where I keep coming back to with Justin Barron. I'm like, I don't need you to be, Luke Shen, stay at home and just, hit everything that moves. I understand if you're an offensive defenseman, but be a defenseman, please.
Right. Yeah. We have a Roman Josi.
Yeah, that's an offensive defenseman.
We have one of those guys. Yeah. A couple of other players you mentioned, Andreas Englund, Jordan Osterley. We will see how they fit in with the opening night roster. A couple of players that are sort of not maybe talked about quite as much. One, Adam Wilsby, because we only saw this much of him, but I really liked what we saw from Wilsby because I felt like we saw some offensive upside from him, but I felt like he was dialed in defensively a little bit more. So I feel like he had a little bit more of that balance. Now, he does not have a ton of NHL time under his belt. So it'll be interesting to see where he lands when it comes to training camp. But there are a couple of players. Ryan Ufko, we saw very briefly in the NHL at the end of the season. He is, I think some people would consider him undersized, but he is very skilled defensively. But he is one to keep your eye on. If towards the end of the season, Nashville does you know what, this didn't work, we're going to go to that youth movement on the fly, Ufko would be an interesting one. Another one that we don't talk about, and this was brought up in the comments, Jake Livingstone, who came in and played NHL minutes, came directly from the NCAA at the end of the season, played some NHL minutes, and we haven't seen him back. Do you think we need to wait for a pivot to a youth movement before we would see somebody like Livingstone back again?
I mean, in fairness, he was called up at one point last year. He just never made it into a game. It was when
Yeah.
they were dealing with injuries and all of that. So he did
Mhm.
come back. He just never made it into a game. Um so I could see that being a situation where it's like an injury or
Yeah.
some sort of extenuating circumstance where
Yeah.
he would get called up.
Yeah. So just some names you may not be as familiar with to keep in the back of your mind, not necessarily for the opening night roster, but as the season goes on. Real quick, Emma, best case scenario for the Nashville Predators defense. Where do how good can they get?
I mean, best case scenario, Nick Hague thrives in a top pairing role alongside
Mhm.
Roman Josi, who remains healthy the entire season. You have Brady Shea coming into his own, looking comfortable, being his best self, alongside Nick Perbix, who also you're going to expect a little bit more from than what we saw in Tampa.
Yeah.
And then I think the third pairing would be Willsby and Barron. I mean, best case scenario is we see Willsby build on what we saw last year, and we see Barron look like a different hockey player when he comes back. That would be
Yeah.
the best case
Best
scenario
case
for me.
scenario. I
Yes.
think worst case scenario, and I have nightmares about this, it does not get better. I
Well,
think if Roman
we've
Josi
already
is in
seen
the
we've already seen the worst case scenario.
don't want to see it twice. Once was enough. If anything can happen with Yossi in the lineup. This is what I will say. Anything can happen with Yossi in the lineup, but you have to have more than Roman Yossi for this defense to compete, especially in the division that they're in if they want to be a playoff team. So let us know your thoughts. What's best case and worst case scenario? Is this defense going to be better, or are we going to sit through 84 years of defensive struggle? Let us know in the comments. Of course, you can find us on social media at LO_Predators too, and let us know what you think there. Mentioning the Central Division, one of the challenges for the Predators next season, competing in the Central Division. Coming up, Emma and I are going to talk later this week about the teams that Nashville has to compete with and how we think they can do that. So make sure you tune in for those episodes coming up later this week. Emma, before we log off today, let us know where everyone can find you and your work.
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingan, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
You can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. That's going to do it for today's episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks again for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back tomorrow with an all new episode. We'll see you then.